Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar on identifying and amplifying your unique value proposition. My name is Amanda Sharp, and I am the Manager of Chapter and Partner Relations at NACE National. We welcome your questions today. You can submit them through the questions or chat panel of this GoToWebinar. We are recording today's presentation. You will be able to access it and past recordings by logging into NACE National's website and checking out the resource library. Please reach out if you have any issues or questions accessing this recording. Our speaker today is Karen Gordon. Karen is NACE National's 2020 Business Development Committee Chair. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Amanda. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started here right on time. Is that right, Amanda? Am I good to go?
You are good to go.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you everyone for being here. As Amanda said, please feel free to send questions in the chat. She will go ahead and chime in with your questions as we move, and some we'll go ahead and keep to the end to make sure we keep on time. As Amanda was mentioning, my name is Karen Gordon. I am the Business Development Committee Chair for the second year in a row for NACE National. Oops, we can get my screen over here to flip. Oh, good. Technical difficulties, just like we talked about, Amanda, every time. All right. So my name is Karen Gordon. I am the NACE National Business Development Committee Chair for the second year in a row. I'm really excited for everything we are doing on the Business Development Committee. I am also the VP of Growth here at Goodshuffle Pro. For those who don't know us at Goodshuffle Pro, we are powerful, easy to use software for event companies. And we are also in our second year of being national sponsors. But today, not here to talk about that. We are here to talk about your unique value proposition. We're going to go over today what is UVP. We're going to talk about find yours. We'll talk a little bit about shaping yours and some of the traps people tend to fall into when they're finding and shaping their unique value proposition. We'll talk about marketing your UVP, how it is connected to your pricing, and then we're going to wrap things up with an action plan, because I know all of that content can be hard to go and say, what am I going to do next? And we're going to go ahead and give a nice, concise action plan at the end. And then, as I mentioned, any questions we haven't gotten through throughout this time, we'll go ahead and do at the end, with the goal of still getting everyone out a little early. So why are we talking about this? Why is this such a kind of buzzword and such a theme and a focus for folks? Well, because at the end of the day, your client is never buying your product or service. They are specifically buying a value. I think this quote says it very well. The customer never buys a product. By definition, the customer buys the satisfaction of a want. He buys value. So think about this in terms of what you're providing. I know it's very tempting for us to go back on our products, on our services, but it's really that want, it's really that value, and we're going to really drill into what that means today, starting with identifying your UVP. So, of course, the first thing to cover is, what is UVP? Some of you may be familiar with this, some of you may not, some of you may have heard it but not being entirely clear on it. And I actually think the best way to break this down is to break it down word by word backwards. So let's start with that third word, proposition. You're proposing something. And when you propose something, it is always best to be specific. Being vague means being forgettable. A nice kind of reference I like to give is, let's imagine you are setting someone up. You're setting up two friends on a date. And you tell your one friend, oh yeah, he's nice. That's probably not going to sell your friend on this setup. It's way too vague. It's unclear. It doesn't really get you excited. Lots and lots of people are nice. Versus if you said, he is so generous. He lent me his car when I'd only known him a week. Now, obviously, you might not be able to fit in that full story or example in your concise UVP, but even the difference of going from calling somebody nice to calling somebody generous is a huge leap in terms of how specific you are in what you're proposing to them. Next, we want to talk about value, working our way backwards here. So you're not pitching the product or service, as we just mentioned. You're actually pitching them on a pain point that you're solving. To put it bluntly, people really don't care what you have. They don't care what you're doing. They don't care about the product. What they want to know is why it's applicable in their lives, because we're selfish, right? Like in what they do, but if they tell you how it applies to their life, you're going to take note. Startups are instructed to do this all the time. You know, we obviously sit right in the middle of the events world and kind of the techie world. So I hear this a lot at the tech networking I go to. They'll say things like, rather than saying, oh, hey, we're a digital platform that's disrupting the blah, blah, blah industry, they're often instructed to say something like, hey, have you ever had a parking ticket and gotten frustrated on figuring out how to pay it? Yeah, we're solving that. And what I did right there is I made you suddenly remember a time you got a parking ticket or a time where you had something similar happen. You felt frustrated, you felt that pain, and then you heard a value of the way that we're going to solve it. That, by the way, is a made up example. I don't actually know a platform that does that. And if you do, please, by all means, email me about it. I would love to hear more. I think it'd be a great idea. And then the final part, funny enough, unique, even though unique value prop starts with this word, is honestly one of the ones that is the most commonly forgotten. And I will completely confess right now, I have a couple confessions this webinar day of my mistakes on finding, amplifying, and identifying my own unique value prop. We have totally fallen into this trap before here at Goodshuffle Pro, where you want to drive home something exciting about you. For us, one example is that our product saves a lot of time. I always want to talk about this because, as I'll discuss later as well, I am someone who very much values my time. I'm always short on it. You know, I've got a busy job and things like that, as I'm sure many of you do. And so I always want to talk about how our software is going to save you time. But this is a bit of a trap because lots of software companies say that. I mean, frankly, if you're using software, chances are you're saving some time. That's the point of technology. It oftentimes helps streamline and save time. Similarly, for all of you, depending which part of the industry you're in, maybe your thing is that you have flawless or beautiful events. But you have to stop and think, is everyone else claiming the same thing? How unique a value proposition? Is it going to be completely falling into what everyone else said they're the best at it? If you're getting that, then you're not really presenting a unique value proposition. So it's important to make sure you remember these specific, pain-focused, and different when you're buttoning up what it is that's making sure that people are coming to you for the right reasons and that you are marketing and displaying that unique value proposition. Now, one of the first things that you need in order to know your specific UVP is to know your audience. If you have not done this already, I've said this before in other talks I've given, you should absolutely make sure that you have buyer personas. And you should go ahead and Google what that is if you're not familiar with the concept. But very basically, this is making sure you know exactly who you're marketing to. They're usually grossly stereotyped personas of people who most commonly book with you. And those are going to be a driving force in everything you do for your marketing, for your sales. And once you have those really buttoned up, these are the 3 personas, 2 personas, 4 personas who always book with me. That's going to really help you in identifying your UVP, and it's going to make sure that you are writing your UVP properly. So just as much as it's important to know your proposition, it's really important to make sure you write it in their voice. So you don't want to try and sound too lofty or fancy if that's not who your clients are. If you have clients who are booking with you because you're funky and hilarious, that's an okay thing to say. You can use a much more casual tone if that's the crew you're booked, because what? If that's the type of event you're most likely getting, then trying to cater towards a different lofty audience, probably you're gonna lose them somewhere along the way anyway. Another trap that people commonly fall into is this temptation to make your UVP a slogan. They want to come up with something creative or clever. But I got to tell you, we're not on Mad Men. You got to resist the urge to go into the fun, creative slogan place where there's things that are real catchy. Instead, when you are creating the exact verbiage for your UVP, I want you to think about these 4 things, and I'd encourage you to write them down, although we will send out these slides, we will share a recording. I want you to make sure that in your UVP, it is clear what you are selling, who it is for, how it will improve their lives, again, that value to them for the selfish in us, And then of course, why it's different. Again, unique. So what you're selling, who it's for, what will improve their lives, and why it's different. And I'm sure you can all already think of examples of slogan-y type of businesses you've heard where they say, we put the this and the this, and you know why I'm saying that they oftentimes miss. Well, what is it you're selling? I'm sorry, who is it for? What's the sell here? You're not going to get it from a cutesy, clever catchphrase. The last trap I want to make sure that you're aware of is not just trying to go for being the best in the business. You know, it's almost like this world's best coffee as the like long running joke. I'm sure any Elf fans know what I'm talking about as well. It is too vague, it is overdone, and it is not relating to me. I don't particularly care that you won an award unless I know why what about you winning that award will change my life. If you won, you know, an amazing award because you provide X value is what I want to hear, because an award is too vague, it is not specific to me, and it's only maybe a little bit unique. So you're missing 2 of the 3 parts of unique value proposition. So these are all the traps I want you to avoid when you're creating yours. They're very tempting because you sit there and you get really excited about certain things, especially if you're the owner of your business. But I want to make sure we're marketing in not our voice, but our client's voice, avoiding the slogan and avoiding the pomp and circumstance.
Oh, quick question,
So now
Karen.
that we know that, sure.
How would you use best? Like if you won the best of like 2019, how would you showcase something like that?
That's a great question. So I think that's going to come in a little bit when we talk about amplifying your UVP, because if you decide what your UVP is based off of how you won that award. So if you won an award, you're the best event planner of 19. It's important that you have that as, okay, well, I'm going to use that as a way to amplify my UVP, but that is not my UVP. That is not why people are booking with me. So if the real reason they're booking with me is because I have an eye for detail that no one else has, because I am the easiest to work with, because I am providing them whatever X value, you can use that as a supporting character in marketing that UVP, but you want to make sure that you avoid the trap of that being what you're promoting, because there's award-winning companies and services out there all the time that you and I are not booking. That is not really what is driving them to you. I hope that makes sense. And with that, I would encourage you to also think kind of 2 sides of the coin when it comes to your value proposition. So first, you want to think about your marketing UVP, and then you want to think about your sales UVP, because it's easier at first to separate them. But I'm going to tell you, spoiler, the goal is we're just finding one. You do not want to have one thing that brings them in the door and another thing that closes them. You lose them. It's not a good storytelling experience. You want to make sure that it's the same proposition, the same promise you're making them that carries throughout. But it's oftentimes easier to separate the 2 to start. Think about what's getting them in the door, what's driving them to your website. You should be able to have lots of tools that help you with that, depending on how you're running your website, how you're hosting your website. What's getting them interested? If you say, well, we get a lot of word of mouth, well, what is it specifically that they're hearing that's making them come in? And then, of course, you need to make sure that you're aware of what ultimately gets them to book. 100,000 website hits is great, but if they're then hitting your website, hitting your competitor's website, and choosing your competitor, obviously we have a big problem here. So when you look at both of those separately and you make kind of, for me, I'm a list person, so I'd probably start making some lists, and we're going to probably see some crossover. If you do end up deciding, for example, that it is your shining personality that's closing the most deals, you need to think, why is that not bringing them in the door? And for some people, it might just be that you're not currently putting your shining personality in the marketing. Some people feel awkward leading with themselves. But here's the thing, if that's what's closing them, who's to say that's not going to bring them in? And you want to start with the promise that you're going to carry throughout. Now, as you're looking to find this, a couple of things to be aware of. Be a little bit careful when it comes to surveying your current clients, people oftentimes forget what actually sold them once they've experienced you. And here's why, and this is a very important thing to remember, another thing I would write down. Your VP is not the only thing you're bringing to the table. Again, it is not the only thing you're bringing to the table. All of us are dynamic professionals who bring lots of things. There are a million reasons that people are booking with you. This is not meant to be a practice of this is the one thing I bring. It's just the thing that you lead and you drive with. So someone who's experienced one of your events, experienced your services, they're going to experience all the greatness and stuff. And so they might be kind of just totally mixed on, oh, well, I loved this and I loved this. Ideally, if you're going to do any surveying, I would try and survey people right after they book you. Hey, I'd love to know what made you choose us, because that's really what you want to grab. You want to grab not necessarily even what you do the best, but what really gets people excited to choose you. Now, in addition to surveys, another thing you want to do is you want to come back to those buyer personas. If you have very clear buyer personas, one of the things you can do outside of just talking to people and having a random sampling and having to make sure you don't kind of get some bias in your survey is look at your buyer personas, these archetypes of the people you're selling to, and try and find the thread of what they have in common. For example, I mentioned for us that we've fallen into the trap of always talking about saving time. It's so important to us. We're really proud of it. We have a bunch of statistics to back it up. But we said, okay, well, everyone wants to save time. What are we seeing over and over again from all these different types of folks who come to us? And I said, I'm seeing person after person come to us and say that they are non-tech people. Now, people have different assumptions of what that means. Some people come to me and say that, and I actually think that they're pretty techie. Other people really, really are not very techie. But we're hearing this over and over again. We're seeing it across our clients. And so that makes it really clear to us that, oh, hey, our ease of use is probably selling them more than talk about the time saving. Because if you're someone who identifies as non-techie and you see a tech tool that looks really easy to use and has all the support behind it, of course, that's going to be a sell point. So looking back at those buyer personas and realizing, oh my gosh, I work with all incredibly busy people, or I work with a lot of people who value what they post on social media and how it's going to look. Sometimes looking back at the common thread of those people is the easiest way to shine the spotlight on whatever the pattern is. And then, of course, as with everything you do, you should always be running tests. Avoid the temptation to go ahead and just stick with what you like the most. You got to run tests. And you're probably going to be running tests of at least 2 different value props. You probably have, by running through these exercises, by pulling back, by surveying, you've figured out, okay, it's probably one of these 2 things that I'm seeing people are booking for with me for. But in addition to running more than one value prop, it's very important to be testing the different wording, because a slight tweak in the way that you word your value prop can have a major impact. So you're going to want to A/B test the wording of your UVP in your email marketing, social media posts, wherever you advertise. And again, you're going to want to make sure that you're not just seeing what got most clicks, but also what gets most sales. Now, this can be a little bit hard because it's much easier to very quickly see what's getting the most clicks, right? Am I, saying, oh, we have an open nature with clients in this one, and I'm saying we have the most vendor relationships in this one, and oh, that one got the most clicks. But unfortunately, you do have to wait. You do have to see what's actually translating to sales. And sometimes you will catch yourself during the sales process talking way more about something totally different. And that's where you have to say, well, wait a minute, this is really what I'm talking about once I get them in front of me. If that's what's selling them, why am I continuing to market with the other value prop? Now, once you've tested, once you've buttoned up your language, you've got your UVP, let's amplify. And when we're amplifying, there are 4 arenas I want everyone to target. Keep in mind, you have to sell the value of the entire experience, throughout the entire experience, rather, if you want to prove ROI to your client. So for example, if I am really sold on the value of saving time with you, because again, that's a big one for me, I frankly don't care if at the end of the day, my event experience was wonderful and I loved it and it was beautiful, if I didn't constantly feel throughout, would I save time with you? Because creating that value is about creating a promise and then keeping that same promise to your clients. So here are the 4 arenas that I wanted to cover. Branding, of course, these are just 4 examples of each. There are tons more examples I'm sure you can think of opportunities to really amplify your UVP. But everything from your logo should fit with your UVP. Your mission statement, both your public-facing mission statement and your internal mission statement with your employees. Your uniform, if your value prop is being the most affordable in town, then sure, a casual vibe might be fine. But if you are somebody who claims to have the most polished, on-time, hardworking crew, and your crew is still wearing maybe t-shirts, obviously that's not going to align. From the beginning, you need to be setting the tone of that value people are coming for, that want that you're selling them. Things like a showroom, obviously I'm coming here thinking more of like a rental company. If you say you're the most organized and you come in and you can see there's a bunch of disheveled things in the back, that needs to be a top priority. You might not think of that as part of your brand experience because that's the back of house, but if anyone is seeing it, it is part of the initial sale in terms of your value add. From a marketing perspective, obviously your website needs to very clearly convey your UVP and your social media as well. So I see it a lot where people will have on their website them pushing that we do this the best, we are awesome at this, we do this, we provide you this. And then you look at their social media and it kind of looks like they're sort of copying what everyone else puts up, right? They like put up a picture when they do an event. They, you know, have a picture of their team here and there. You really want to be trying to drive in that consistency across platforms of what the value is to the consumer. Your materials as well, your advertisements, and specifically your calls to action. So for example, let's say that you are a venue and you have decided that your UVP is that you have the most stunning views of any venue in the local area. If your call to action on an advertisement or a social media post clicks through and doesn't take them to either book an appointment to see the view or do a virtual walkthrough, you're losing them right there. It needs to lead them immediately to something that is satiating the value that they are going for. And I will confess, another confession of me really messing this up recently. We are in the midst of launching a brand new marketing website. And anyone on this call who has experienced that knows that we are behind because that's what happens with brand new marketing website calls. And to have a great landing page to explain specifically how we work with DJs. Well, it wasn't going to be ready in time. And I had a partner who was sending out an email for us to DJs to say, hey, one of our co-founders is a DJ. We have someone who built us who is a DJ. We get it. We know how we can help you. You know, here's how we work specifically with DJs. Well, that email went out and it then led to our general marketing page that we currently have that talks a lot more about event rental companies, design and decor companies, people we work with a little more than DJs currently, but we do work with DJs. But how frustrating and how confusing to all those DJs to see an email that said, built by you, for you, and then land on a page that didn't convey that same story, that same value. And I even had somebody, and I totally appreciated his honesty, find me and reach out to me to let me know what he thought of that. A great feat, but it was a great reminder as I was preparing this of why, you know, here, talk about you need to practice what you preach. It is really important. If people see a value in that, and you know there's a value in that, and you're going to portray that, you need to make sure you don't veer from that story at any point, because they're coming to you for that value, and any kind of misstep outside of it is going to confuse and frustrate your client. I'll also point out specials. People ask a lot about specials and discounts and deals. And one thing that I think is kind of interesting is that you can actually, not only do you want to make sure your discounts don't go against what your value is, but you can actually use them as a way to highlight your value. So for example, if one of the things you do is save time, maybe you're throwing in an extra time saving service. Like I'll actually manage a bonus vendor relationship for you if you book by the end of the month. You're a photographer who really prides their fast turnaround time. I always, my brides, their photos by within, maybe the special, I'm going to do a bonus day earlier. I'm going to guarantee you within 6 days if you book now. So you can use the deal and of reducing the look and the feel of your value. You can actually use this as a way to market and promote and double down on your unique value proposition. In terms of sales, obviously you want your UVP in your pitch. You also want it on your proposals. Oh my goodness, if I see one more person who claims to have the best florals or the nicest lounge furniture, and you're not putting photos on your proposals, that is just the worst thorn in my side, because that is losing sales. That is the time where you are closing a sale. You should be driving home that UVP. Same with your closing verbiage. What do you say to get them to sign on the dotted line? And does it harken back to that value that they were looking to solve, that pain point from the beginning? And you may know all of this, especially if you're somebody who's a solopreneur or running a small company, or you're a manager that just totally gets in the weeds every day and does this. You may know it all. It's important to remember that you are training your team on this so that they know how to drive UVP until the money is in the hand, that they are not just forgetting what they need to be paying until that deal is closed. Now, it should go without saying, but of course, getting them to close the deal and getting the money is not the end. You want to make sure you deliver on the promise that you set out to do. So you should be thinking about your UVP in your hiring, in your standard operating procedures, in every touch point. When you're checking in on a client to make changes, you need to find the language to sneak in to remind them of this. You need to make sure that when you're closing the loop on their payments, that you are finding ways to drill in on your UVP. And when you do a follow-up, if you're somebody who asks for a review, on Yelp or whatever else it may be, I would encourage you to remind them of the promise that you made them. If you feel like my florals were exactly what I'd promised you from the beginning, if you feel like my turnaround time was the best in the business, if you feel like you would have saved no more time doing this with anyone else, whatever it may be, I would encourage you to ask them that when you're asking them for a review, because you are reminding them, hey, all things else aside, sorry it rained on your wedding day, but was this why you booked me, and is this not what I gave you exactly, is going to remind them to give you the most positive possible review. Now that you know your value, now that you're amplifying that value from start to finish, you need to also think about how your pricing aligns. If any of you happened to be at NACE Experience last year and saw my talk on transparency and technology, you have already heard my passion for transparency in pricing and value. My value-based pricing to me is just such an important thing, particularly for the industry we're in. I thought this quote was a good one. Price is what you pay, value is what you get. I like to liken it back to the restaurant industry. If you think about when you look at the prices on a menu, you are immediately making assumptions about the value you're about to get. If it is a higher priced menu, just typically you're assuming that the food you're about to get is pretty good. But of course, there needs to be other things that match up with this. So if you're looking at the restaurant's website and the decor in their dining room, the uniforms of their staff, these are all the clues that are leading you up to the value. But if the prices don't match that, or even worse, what prices are listed, what kind of value would you perceive? If I hear there's a hot new restaurant in town and I see there's a beautiful website and I see beautiful photos of it, but I can't figure out how much it costs, I'm not assuming there's a higher value. I'm assuming there's something fishy about this. If I go in and their prices are really high, but their decor is really low, there's a real big mismatch that's really not going to jive well with me. So pricing is a really big, important part of making sure that your value is being conveyed. Now, when I talk about the importance of the price transparency, I hear three things over and over. specifically from the events industry, that are concerned. So I want to address those right out of the gate. One, commoditization. Real big buzzword right now. The concern that the more you show your prices, the more it's going to drive down prices. But this is true of anything. I always like to talk about there's always going to be someone cheaper. And when I look at things, I mean, I talked a lot in my last talk on transparency about how you're much more protected by the service industry than if you actually have a commodity industry. But I love one example I thought of a commodity that is overcoming this is a company like Zappos. Does Zappos have the best shoes? No. Do they have the cheapest shoes? No. Do I buy my commodity of shoes from them? Almost exclusively, because they have sold me on the value of an easy, consistent shopping experience and top-notch customer service. There are plenty of cheaper places where I could buy the exact same shoes. I'm not finding highly unique shoes on Zappos. I can find them anywhere else. But I have mentioned several times now that I'm the type of consumer who very much values my time. So an easy experience where I know I can easily drop them off at my front desk and they can go back if I didn't like them is huge to me. I'm very busy. And this isn't even a service-based industry. Shoes are very much a commodity. There's plenty of people who would have said years ago, you put the shoe prices on different websites, there's going to be one website for shoes. Zappos is a great example of why that doesn't happen. They found their value and they found their buyer persona. And I am a very, very loyal fan. You can ask my front door man at my building. Another thing I hear as a concern is low barrier to entry. And we hear this a lot with event planning, that there's people who can just pop up a website now, claim that they're an event planner, and there's tons of competition swarming the industry. But one thing that you have over them, assuming you have experience, is that you know your audience. And we've talked throughout this about how important that is, about really knowing your voice and knowing what they really want, what they actually need. And sometimes you can see things like, you know what, a corporate client, what they really want when they're booking is someone who's going to deal with their nightmare billing department. Somebody who's going to have a proper invoice and deal with Jane who comes back and forth 50 times. And we have the tools to do that. We know exactly how to do that. Or maybe you are like, I've worked with a million brides and I know at the end of the day, if I can get somebody who cracks a joke with their mother-in-law and gets them out of the way, that's what they really want. So whatever it is, whatever secret sauce don't get caught in showing a value prop that your inexperienced competitor is claiming. Stick with this unique value prop. Stick with what you know they really need and they really want, and take advantage of the fact that you know that. And the last thing people always say is sticker shock. People tell me, I don't want people to freak out at the price. And I say, for one, you actually do want them to freak out at the price. They cannot afford you. Because if you're a little above what they can pay, then there's a conversation to be had. But if they have actual sticker shock, then chances are they're going to waste your time anyway. So you do want to get rid of people who are never going to be able to book with you. Two, if your prices feel too high to share, then I like to tell you this is a symptom of poor marketing. The issue is not the price showing, the issue is that your marketing is not good. If you have a website from 1999 and you have sky-high pricing, then yes, that's a problem. If somebody sends me a quote from their AOL email address and it is thousands of dollars, I'm gonna be suspicious. I'm sorry. People get very mad when I just have the AOL email addresses, but it's true. Coming back to the restaurant, it doesn't shock me when I walk in and every clue, the incredible nice doorman who greets me, the person who shows me to my seat, the white tablecloths, or the fancy bio of the chef in the menu, all these things. When I open it up then and I see that it's $35 for every entree, I'm not shocked, because I understand that I've walked into something with this value, and they have every step and every clue along the way has led me to believe that that's part of what I'm getting. Now remember, you have to show your value everywhere you show your pricing. If there's any place that those pricing shows and you're not doing that showing, that clue giving of your value, you need to make sure that that is fixed right away. So on top of your brand, your marketing, your sales and event execution that we covered, I want you to audit everywhere you show pricing, your website, your proposals, even if you send them one off. And these are 4 gut checks you can go through when you're showing that pricing. 1, is it appealing? Be looking at the price, but simultaneously thinking, yeah, I want this. 2, is it exclusive? Will they feel that there's a value that's unique? Again, very easy for us to forget the first thing in unique value prop. 3, does the price point match the pain point? This is key. In my made-up example I gave of a parking ticket app earlier, it couldn't be expensive because that's not a pain point you run into that often, hopefully, depending on what you do. But you need to be realistic of how important is the pain point you're solving and how unique is that value before you decide, does the price really merit this? And right along with that, does it feel worth it? And again, not to you, but to your buyer persona. For Zappos, there's probably plenty of people who work at Zappos on their marketing team who think, this is stupid, I would totally buy shoes somewhere else cheaper. But they know that me, as their buyer persona, knows that feels that there's a worth in being able to return everything when I change my mind after I order it, and knowing that I won't get stuck in a situation of figuring out how to return it, that is going to suck up my time that's important to me. For many of you, it's not even just about what the buyer persona values. I mean, you might have the huge advantage of if you're doing weddings, there's always a little bit more of a worth it when there's an emotional attachment. But are you capitalizing off of that? Are you making sure that they're remembering the emotion of their wedding when they are looking at that price point? What are you doing to drive that worth it feeling home? So let's talk next steps. I know I shared a lot of content and I know I'm a fast talker, but let's go ahead and talk about what we're gonna all do next, myself included. Start with reviewing your wins. The fun part that get to pat yourself on the back. Think about what you know you're doing that is getting people in the door, and think about what you know you're currently doing that is getting them over the finish line. Make those lists, find the commonalities, make sure that you run through, is this a specific proposal? Is it a value that is solving a pain point? And is it unique? Again, back to the basics of breaking down UVP. Once you've come up with a couple that run through those tests, be sure to actually test them. Don't go with your gut. Don't just ask around. Sure, it's a fun way to go and dig for compliments, to ask everyone, why do you like me? But the best way to do it is to actually run some A/B tests and really nail down the language. You need to know the real reason people book, and you need to make sure you're saying it in a voice that resonates with your specific audience. Another thing to remember, you don't have to try everything upside down overnight. Sometimes it can be frustrating to realize, we have got tons of marketing materials that talk about time. I don't want to have to go and overhaul all of those, but to suddenly realize, hey, you know what? People are really much more interested in ease of use. Let me try and get one win per category. So something from the brand perspective, something from the marketing, something from sales, something from the way we're actually executing on this promise. And then of course, pricing accordingly. So making sure that everywhere that your price is showing, your value is showing. Making sure any discounts that are given are aligning with your value. And then also, frankly, knowing that you are significantly less likely to feel backed against a wall on giving a discount when you have a clear UVP. When you are totally confident that you are uniquely giving a solution to a pain point, and you are saying that from day one, you're not going to get as many clients ask those discounts because they understand the worth and the value. And you're not going to feel as wavering on it because you're feeling confident and remembering this is priced this way and it aligns completely with the value that I bring to the table. So that is a bit about how you can find, identify, and amplify your unique value proposition. Here's part of our unique value proposition is that we're powerful yet easy to use. I would be happy to talk to anyone about UVP. You can email me directly. I'd be happy to talk to anyone about Goodshuffle Pro if that's something of interest. I hope you'll at least follow us on Instagram. We like getting more social media followers, and shout outs to our fellow NACE friends. From that, I'll turn it over to Amanda if there's any questions.
Yeah, there's one quick question, which is about presenting the new UVP to your team. How would you do that? How do you make sure that everyone is working towards the same goal?
That's a great question. And I think it's really important to realize that value, right? That we all need to be working towards the same goal: marketing, sales, operations, whomever. I think a couple things I would note is, one, be sure to put that soundbite in that I mentioned, which is UVP does not mean it is your only value proposition. I think people tend to get defensive because they're like, well, that's not the only thing we do. And everyone has something different they hang their hat on, right? Like someone who starts a decor company might be really creative, and they started the event company because they're so highly creative, but you're finding more and more that people are booking with you because you have professional tools and know how to follow up. Well, that CEO is not going to want to hear that people are booking with you because of the ease of getting. She's going to want to feel, or she's going to want to feel, hey, it's because I'm so creative and blah, blah, blah. So it's important to start by saying, like, hey, there's a lot of reasons people are booking with us, and these things mount up to it. But the really unique part, the really part that really is driving home solving a pain point, we're seeing time and time again is this. We all need to work towards that. So I'd say making sure they know it's not the only thing. And then, of course, any data you can bring. So another good reason to test is to get more people on board. To say, look, we've sent out surveys to our past 20 clients and asked them what was made them book. And they didn't say it was, Bob's creativity. They said that they came here and they saw that we had real clear standard operating procedures, and that gave them a sense of ease. And we can see from our buyer personas that they're all real type A brides. So we need to harp in on that type A bride and know that telling them about our standard operating procedures is actually what's getting them there, not just saying our events prettiest or coolest or the neatest, because they're vague and because those do not actually resonate with our type A brides. So 3 points there would be not the only reason it books, running those tests so you have data points, and then again, coming back to your buyer personas.
Well, thank you, Karen. That was very helpful. That was around the main topic of most of the questions. So yeah, let them know how they can reach out to you, what you just if there's any other information you have, any tips. That was one question that was asked was any tips when creating a UVP besides the ones in the beginning, like if you get stuck.
Yes. So I feel like one of the reasons I went over traps in the beginning is because I know those are traps I fall into, right? Is like, I want to be creative, or I really this. Probably the biggest, again, I'm a time freak. So I'm always wanting to say, well, I would really click on this. And we catch ourselves all the time with the leadership on our team, marketers, people will say, you know what, there's no way I would click on this. But you know what, one of our running jokes to this day was one of the latest ads I ran for Goodshuffle Pro. Our leaders did not want, they thought it was silly. They said they would never click on it. And it was one of our top to this day performing ads, because I said, you're not the buyer. You're not the person who's buying this. That's not the persona I'm going after. So I would always start with writing out a bunch of ideas of what you think, and then going through and saying, okay, are any of these falling into the traps we went over? Is it really in my unique buyer's persona? Running through all of those kind of checks of, is it worth it? Is it really unique? Does it fit the people we're selling to? And you'll find a process of elimination comes quicker than you might imagine.
That's great advice. Thank you. Oh, one more question. Oh, no question. It's just saying thank you for your time, and it was very informative. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you all for your time. I know time is important to all of us, and I appreciate you taking your time with me. I hope everyone found it valuable. As I mentioned, I'm always happy to chat, whether it's about UVP or anything else in the event and tech spaces. You can reach me at karen@goodshuffle.com. And again, follow us on social media and give us a shout.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Amanda. Have a good one.
You too.